Welcome to SMR Bitesize. Wednesday's reality check is coming right up. But before that, if you like what we're doing, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Every Wednesday on SMR Bitesize, we bust the myths, unpack the porkies, and correct the record. Now, whether you're prepared to admit it or not, the evidence that Brexit has failed is simply overwhelming. So much so, in fact, that there's really no need to even debate it any longer. And you know what? We're not even going to waste our time in this short video debunking this myth either. Which myth? Well, this one, as conveyed in song so beautifully by the cast of Spitting Image.
It's not because of Brexit, it's not because of Brexit, this is not our fault. There were queues at petrol stations and nothing on the shelves.
Fruit just left to rot and the trucks won't drive themselves.
Of course it bloody is. And once again, the evidence is so strong, there's just no point debating it. So we're all on the same page there, right? Brexit has failed, and the problems we're experiencing in the UK in 2023, astronomical food prices, businesses going to the wall, a critical lack of staff for the NHS, young bands and artists no longer being able to tour easily in Europe. Oh God, the list goes on. And let's face it, there are amoeba on Saturn that can grasp the concept that all that stuff has got more than a little to do with Brexit. Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on, Ben, which myth exactly are you going to bust today? I want my reality check. Well, I'll tell you. It's the myth that it's not Brexit to blame for our problems. It's the fact that Brexit hasn't been, and I hate to use this word, Liz Truss, delivered properly unto us. Anne Widdecombe's been shouting about this for months until there's precious little hot air left in her. Bless. But let's be honest, it's coming from all directions now. It's simply the latest Brexiteer ploy to wriggle out of taking any responsibility whatsoever for the apocalypse of Brexit. Because let's face it, no matter how hard they're pushed, some of them are never going to take responsibility for what they've done.
What a completely hopeless Prime Minister we've got. Without doubt, the worst I've ever seen in my life. Okay. That I couldn't ever anticipate.
Own your shit, Nigel.
But let's bring things bang up to date. Here, rather than facing the obvious truth that is Brexit is the biggest Boxing Day turd stuck in the S-bend of all time, take a listen to what Nigel Farage now thinks the real problem is.
It's a failure because of the way this government has failed to implement it. So the failure of Brexit is to be laid fairly and squarely at the door of the Conservative government. They have chosen not to use the powers that we have with Brexit.
Yeah. And like I said, he's not alone. Former Brexit Party MEP and public orator of questionable skills.
I am a woman and I don't have balls down there, but I have balls, I tell you that.
Thinks she's hit the nail square on the head by coming up with an even more specific problem.
Here we are 7 years after that referendum took place. Is it not time just to... Nothing wrong with admitting mistakes. Is it not time we just wait, you know what? It hasn't worked. Let's try something else.
One of the reasons it hasn't worked is because no one's want to use any of the levers that we now have as a sovereign nation to make it work.
Why wouldn't they?
Well, it's a good question. You need to ask them, not me.
Do you know what, Alex? You're spot on. It is a good question, and we do need to ask them. If only I had someone on the end of the line right now that could just clear all this up for us. Well, that's handy. Who could it be? Oh, great, it's me old mucker Jacob. Quite possibly the biggest Brexit loon out there, bar Farage. Let's see what he's got for us. Jacob, you're live on SMR Bitesize. I'll get straight to it. Alex from Brexit on Sea wants to know why we're not pulling any of the levers we now have as a sovereign nation to make Brexit work.
It would have been an act of self-harm.
What would? You're talking about exercising our newfound sovereignty and applying the same checks to goods coming into the UK from the EU as they apply to goods they receive from the UK, right? And that would be an act of self-harm.
That's why we're not adopting them.
Yeah, well, can you be more specific? I mean, what would be the outcome for ordinary families in the UK if we did?
It would have increased costs for people, and we are trying to reduce costs. So that's the purpose of not going ahead with the...
So would it be safe to conclude from that, Jacob, that you're now quite a big fan of free trade between the EU and the UK?
Free trade is hugely advantageous to consumers.
OK, well, I have to say, thank you for your honesty, Jacob. I really appreciate that. You do know, don't you, that there's a really easy solution so we can totally rock this free trade thing you're on about? Jacob? We seem to have been cut off. It's a shame because it's the most interesting thing he's ever said. Well, I hope that answers your question, Alex. We're not yanking on those levers of sovereignty because it would be an act of self-harm. You know what? If you can't get your head around that, just keep telling yourself,
Not our fault, not our fault, not our fault.
If you enjoyed this video, visit 16millionrising.co.uk, where you can listen to this week's full radio show for free, support us with a donation, buy us a coffee, or subscribe as an early riser. Back tomorrow.